all right, and say, I'm home.
The best part about homecoming is the band to me.
Kappa Alpha, founded at Howard University. More organizations would come: Kappa Alpha Psi, Omega Psi Phi, Delta Sigma Theta, Phi Beta Sigma, Zeta Phi Beta, Sigma Gamma Rho, and Iota Phi Theta.
They're not just clubs. They're not just here for the 4 years. These are national organizations that have lifelong membership.
There are now thousands of chapters worldwide, making up the National Pan-Hellenic Council, also known as the Divine Nine.
And one of the founding members of Delta Sigma Theta was born right here on the island.
Jessie McGuire Dent was one of 22 women who founded Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated on the campus of Howard University on January 13th, 1913.
She graduated from Central High School, valedictorian, and then went on to Howard University.
The organization was founded on sisterhood, scholarship, and service, even participating in the Women's Suffrage Parade back in 1913.
They forced the black women to march at the end of the parade. So even within the fight for equality to vote, there was segregation between the women. But that didn't deter her.
After graduating from Howard, Dent returned to Galveston, where she had a successful career as a teacher at Central High, the very school she attended.
30 years later, in 1943, she sued the Galveston Independent School District for equal pay for black teachers because they were getting 20% less than white teachers, and she won.
Jessie McGuire Dent died on March 12, 1948, a woman who spent her life fighting for the equality of all people.
Juneteenth was Juneteenth way before the country acknowledged that it was Juneteenth.
Of course, Juneteenth became more popular in 2020, but it was always important to the former enslaved and their descendants. It's always been important here in Texas.
And when I was a child, people were talking about that day to celebrate.
The oral history of Juneteenth has been passed down for generations and decades prior to it becoming a state holiday in 1979 and a national holiday in 2021.
Sometimes people, in those earliest days, people were punished for celebrating.
The very first celebration happened here July 1st, 1865. The mayor of Galveston got upset and arrested the promoter, but the mayor was not really in charge of the city any longer. The Union Army was. So the officer then, who had given permission for the event, arrested the mayor, put the mayor in jail, let the black promoter out, and on July 15th, they had another reception where they honored the troops.
The celebrations involved food. Obviously, you were supposed to have a red drink. When we were kids, it was usually red soda water, but I gather that at the time it was red hibiscus tea, which was on the menu. They gathered at churches, parks, and so forth. There in Houston, Emancipation Park was started by a group of men who pooled their resources in the 1870s and had this land that was supposed to be strictly for the purposes of celebrating Juneteenth.
Now it's becoming more commercialized, so you see Juneteenth napkins and Juneteenth banners and signs and T-shirts, and so that's a part of it. But while we're celebrating and partying, we have to, as David O'Neill says, party with a purpose. And we need to make sure that education is a part of this conversation.
Parades are one of the main ways Juneteenth has been recognized over the decades across the state of Texas. Today in Galveston, there are a number of events, both historical and new to the island, from historical markers on almost every corner to the absolute equality mural on the Strand. There's also the annual Juneteenth banquet and Juneteenth gala, as well as the annual Juneteenth Scholarship Gala, where Miss Juneteenth is crowned, gospel and jazz concerts, spoken word, and panel discussions. The holiday also consists of exhibits, festivals, reenactments, and guided tours. You can also check out impactful artwork at the NIA Cultural Center, which hosts Freedom School every summer for students. And new this year, for a limited time only, the powerful Blank Slate Monument.
The Blank Slate Monument was done by international artist and Ghanaian artist Kwame Akoto-Bamfo. In 2021, it made its debut in the United States. It's been to 19 other locations before coming here to Galveston.
The Blank Slate Monument was created to challenge the narrative of Confederate monuments. The artist says it's a visual representation of the Black experience and struggle in America. Here's how it's explained. You see people lifting each other up, starting with an enslaved person's face pressed into the ground. He has no rights, yet struggles to support future generations. Above him, a Black Union soldier with a noose around his neck. He's trying to keep an American flag up, even as he supports an activist mother who has a child on her back. That mother is holding a lantern as she fights for her baby's future. This is the Blank Slate Monument, a traveling art piece where the voice of the ordinary person can share their views on issues concerning Black history.
The experience of being African American.
It's the journey to the freedom of African Americans here in the South. It feels good to know that they fought for it.
We have an obligation to never be silenced.
Protect our kids, they are the future. It's sad, but also it makes me feel good that I am where I am now and be able to do the things I do.
The Blank Slate Monument will be in Galveston through July 5th.
There are so many firsts in Black history and education that happen right here on Galveston Island and recognized with this historical marker. It mentions the first public high school for Blacks west of the Mississippi River.
Yes, Central High School was established in 1885, 20 years after Juneteenth. And here on the school's third campus is the old colored branch of the Rosenberg Library.
Opened in 1905, it's believed to be the first public library for African Americans in the southern United States.
While getting an education was one struggle, learning about African American history was and continues to be another.
I wasn't really taught much about it growing up.
I didn't think Galveston would have this type of history.
I thought it was maybe somewhere in like Louisiana.
I really learned about Juneteenth when I started going to Freedom Schools.
I started learning about Juneteenth in Freedom School.
In Galveston, we really don't get the opportunity to learn more about like our culture as a whole, especially in school.
But Miss Rooks, she's adamant about us learning about Juneteenth.
One thing about history, if you aren't aware of your history in the past, to learn from it, to grow from it, then in many aspects you're doomed to repeat it. I think it's important that we understand our history. No matter which side of things that you're on, you need to be educated. Being quiet about it all is not healthy for our society.
In 2021, Texas passed a controversial law which gives specific instruction on how Texas teachers can talk about current events and America's history of racism in the classroom. Texas is one of several states that passed legislation aimed to ban the teaching of critical race theory in public schools. Critical race theory is defined as ideas holding that racial bias is inherent in many parts of Western society, especially in its legal and social institutions. In recent years, there's been a push